Failure is not an option. The Apollo program wasn't always about rockets and men to the moon. It was also a time to share a soggy and nostalgic culture that we know and love from Mission Control. So what was this most laid-back part of working in Mission Control? It was the smoke-filled rooms and celebration cigars, which we are going to talk about on the next Vintage Retrospect. Hello, I am Chad, your host for another episode of Vintage Retrospect. Not only this is a remake of the video I did last year due to corrupt video footage, it also marks the rebrand that I hope you will enjoy. Let's jump into Mission Control and let's see what the culture was during those vintage times of space. In the 50s, everybody smoked. This is why when you watch old Apollo footage, you can see almost everyone smoking a cigarette at the stations. This would include people who worked on the spacecraft, the rockets, people who worked on the small parts, people in Mission Control, and of course including the astronauts. This seemed crazy and dangerous. So why would NASA allow such a thing to go on during the missions? Well, it goes like this. The allowance of smoking cigarettes was based on the foundation of the celebration culture at NASA. If a mission was successfully completed, they would light up their customized victory cigars. This of course creates the smoking culture we see in Mission Control. A 1952 Gallup poll indicated that 52% of American men smoked cigarettes. Let's start with 1957, where the Mercury 7 had 3 of the 7 astronauts smoking cigarettes during the inaugural ceremony announcing the candidacy for the Mercury 7 program.
Which of these men will be first to orbit the Earth, I cannot tell you. He won't know himself until the day of the flight. The astronaut training program will last probably 2 years. During this time, our urgent goal is to subject these gentlemen to every stress, each unusual environment they will experience in that flight. Before the first flight, we will have developed our Mercury spaceship to the point where it will be as reliable as man can devise. We expect it to be as reliable as any experimental aircraft. It's my pleasure to introduce to you, and I consider it a very real honor, gentlemen. From your right, Malcolm S. Carpenter, Leroy G. Cooper, John H. Glenn, Virgil I. Grisson, Walter M. Schirra, Alan B. Shepard, Donald K. Slayton. These, ladies and gentlemen, are the nation's Mercury astronauts.
These 3 astronauts include Deke Slayton, Wally Schirra, and Alan B. Shepard. One reporter jokingly asked some of the astronauts what were they going to do up in the space capsule while smoking cigarettes. Of course, that's probably not going to be a great idea due to the health hazards and how small and cramped the area of the spacecraft will be. So these astronauts pretty much gave it up. Smoking definitely did make its way to Mission Control considering the high stress and high stakes environment that it was. Gene Kranz, the flight director of Apollo and Mission Control, once said, "The room smells of cigarettes with an overlay of pizza, stale sandwiches, full waste baskets, and coffee that is burned onto the hot plates." If you pay close attention to Apollo footage, you can definitely see where the white saline has turned yellow over the years. Basically, the equipment used back then supported the cigarettes like the MOCR consoles. They had ashtrays built right into the consoles. They were actually designed for the operators to be smoking at their stations. This is absolutely insane. The electronic equipment of the era was also much more resilient to tobacco smoke than modern low voltage and highly miniaturized stuff that you see today. Even the astronaut selection did not discriminate anyone who smoked either. The original Mercury 7 astronauts all smoked except for Gordon Cooper. You can see here a shining example of how commonplace smoking was during the entire Mercury campaign. Some astronauts definitely had to make some sacrifices if they wanted to go to the moon, such as Wally Schirra for the Apollo 7 mission. He had to actually give up smoking or he wasn't going to fly the mission in 1968. Of course, this celebratory tradition didn't last forever. The law changed in July of 1989 to prohibit smoking inside buildings at the Kennedy Space Center. Well, there you have it. More historical contexts that tell commonly untold stories of the Apollo program. If you've learned anything today from this historical adventure, please consider hitting that thumb and subscribing so that others can catch secondhand smoke from watching this video also. I am your host, Chad, and I will see you out on the launch pad.